Hey guys, thanks for joining me on another episode of Cartels Unearthed. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I don't think many people might relate to the cocaine business and the cartels, but it's crazy just how how big of a reach the cartel and the cocaine business had in its heyday of the 80s and 90s, even where you least expected it. This is more like a fact, something that most people didn't know or don't know, but it really happened, and it's crazy how it happened, and life just has its ways of messing things up, or whatever happens. So I don't know if anyone remembers of Avianca Flight 52. So Avianca Flight 52 was a regularly scheduled flight between Bogota and New York's JFK, with a stop in Medellin. So it'd do Bogota, it would stop in Medellin, pick up more passengers, and then come to New York. So in 1990, January 25th, 1990, this plane was coming in from Bogota, from Medellin. It had 158 passengers and crew. And it was a winter night. It was raining. It was windy, and there was a lot because of the weather. There were delays at the airport at JFK for landing. So this plane was held up in the air, going in circles, because it was in a pattern. It was put in a holding pattern until until they caught up and allowed it to land. So it was backed up. It was delayed. Long story short. The plane, which was a Boeing 707, the plane ran out of fuel. It was running out of fuel, and pilots mentioned it several times to the air traffic controllers, but they didn't actually declare an emergency. And so unless they declared an emergency, the air traffic controllers didn't take it as an emergency unless you say, I am declaring an emergency. The plane ended up crashing in Long Island in Cove Neck, which is towards the north shore of Long Island. So Long Island sticks out off New York City, and Cove Neck is towards the north shore of it. The plane crashed in the backyard of a famous tennis player's home, or I believe their parents, something like that, but it was someone famous. There was no explosion, there was nothing like that, because there was no fuel. There were, if I'm not mistaken, about 65 survivors, something like that. 65 to 70 survivors. The plane broke in a couple of pieces, and about half the passengers and crew survived. Including in the people who survived, I have to laugh. It's kind of funny when you think about it. That's just, they almost made it, but they didn't make it. It wasn't meant to be for these cocaine traffickers. Two passengers on board, two men, were packing coke. One of them had swallowed about 30 packets of cocaine, and another one had swallowed about 24 packets of cocaine, 2 dozen. They both survived the accident, the crash, but they had severe injuries, and so they required surgery. So obviously, they're taking all the survivors to the hospitals, and as they're arriving in the hospitals, the doctors are seeing what's wrong with them, and one of them, he dislocated his hip, he fractured his spine, he broke a couple of ribs. The other one had internal bleeding, and so they both required surgery for whatever reasons to save them, or And when they were taking the x-rays, they found the pellets in their stomachs, in their abdomen, and in their rectum. So yeah, it became a situation where the DEA and narcotics was involved, so their lives were at risk, and surprisingly, they actually couldn't operate on them immediately until the pellets passed naturally, because in the event something happens in the surgery, they could have punctured the pellets, which would overdose the patient. They ended up, both of them, serving 7 years to life. I don't know. They were sentenced to 7 years to life in prison. I don't know if they got out after 7 years or they are serving life in prison. I have a feeling they probably did 7 years. I mean, yeah, you were packing, but at the same time you just survived an airline crash. So I feel something had to have been done there in leeway. The street value for what both of them were packing was about $200,000, and this is 1990. So the Medellin cartel is still. This was January 1990. So the Medellin cartel is still active. Pablo hasn't turned himself in. My family has still not turned themselves in. So there still is the Medellin cartel. There's still drug trafficking going on very, very seriously, and the fact that the flight originated from Medellin goes to show that the cocaine originated from Medellin. So just one of those crazy stories that you don't really think about until you look in further and you realize that wow, these two men were probably dealers or traffickers for the Medellin cartel, and probably would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for fate putting them on a plane that ran out of fuel and crashed on Long Island. I'm pretty sure if they would have walked away from the accident without any injuries and not needing any surgery, they probably would have gotten away with it. I don't think anyone would have questioned you, what's in your stomach, what's in your bag, after you just survived a plane crash. Had it not been for needing surgery, they probably would have gotten away with it. So, just an interesting factoid. Something I thought I would share when I found out about this years ago, and it popped up again on my radar a couple of weeks ago, and I figured this would be something, one of those crazy factoids to share. How fate is psychotic, and sometimes some things are just not meant to be. And in this case, for these two gentlemen, it was not meant to be that they get into the cocaine business at all. They had absolutely no success in it, and that was pretty much fate. So, yeah. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment below, questions on my Instagram. Feel free to use whichever works for you. And thanks for tuning in to another episode, and I'll just catch you on the next one. Take care.